It's an interactive session, so to that end, I'd like to introduce Nick Leader, who is going to lead this session from the ITI Group. Nick.
Excellent, thanks. So, as mentioned, this is an interactive session. So this is actually not us being interactive, it's about you being interactive. It's a little bit of a hijinks. We've got lots of technology going on here. So hopefully the tech gods are going to be with us as we start this. But please everybody, if you haven't got already, get your phones in hand and make sure it's connected to the Wi-Fi. There was a really long telephone number that came up earlier on, which I don't know. But hopefully you can connect to Wi-Fi or you've got a signal here. You're going to need your phones to interact here. So I'm really excited today to kind of start off the public consultation around the High Value Manufacturing Catapult's new nuclear manufacturing framework. And there's copies of this around the outside. So as you go outside, please feel free to grab one and have a look at that document in more detail. Clicker, there we go. So I want to start off, and before we start with this interactive session, by the way, and that's a hint to get your phones, by the way, I'm going to give you lots of hints about getting your phones ready, yeah? I want to start with a number. There is £100 billion planned for UK civil and defence nuclear investment over the next decade. And we've heard from the two speakers and presentations earlier on how great that opportunity is, and it's about us trying to seize it as manufacturers. The global nuclear market is also projected to grow to £1 to £1.5 trillion over the same period. So this opportunity is not just in the UK, it is a global opportunity that manufacturers have the opportunity to gain access to. And for the first time, we've got name-funded programs. We've got Hinkley C, Sizewell C, Rolls-Royce SMR at Wilfer, Hartlepool Dreadnought, Warhead Infrastructure. The investment is coming. The question is whether UK manufacturers can capture it, or whether we once again watch that investment go overseas. So let's be honest. Right now, we are not well positioned as a nation to capture it. The Fingleton Review, which was mentioned earlier on, found that UK is the most expensive place in the world to build a nuclear power station. We lack the sovereign capability of the highest value components, the reactor pressure vessels, steam generators, heavy forgings, these things known that sit in something called the primary island. And our supply chains currently are somewhat fragmented, and small and medium enterprise manufacturers are struggling or seeing as a major hurdle to qualify to gain entrance into the nuclear sector. So this framework now exists because the status quo is not acceptable. We're going to have to change how we work today to take forward and seize this opportunity over the next decade. So, this session is about you and your opportunities. We need about a 20 to 25% uplift in nuclear capabilities, and that's going to come from cross-sector entrants. So organisations or firms that operate in industries like aerospace, oil and gas, defence, and advanced engineering. These skills are transferable directly. Things like high-integrity welding, precision machining, modular assembly, non-destructive testing, and digital quality systems. And these are not exotic nuclear capabilities. They are your core capabilities applied to a new specification in nuclear. So we don't need to reinvent your business. What we need to happen is a commitment to the qualification journey. So let's be honest here, we've kind of heard this pitch before, but I think for the first time when we listened to GB Energy Nuclear, as you're quite right, that's not that easy to roll off the tongue, and Rolls-Royce SMR, this time is genuinely different. We had the final investment decision in July last year and financial close in November for Sizewell C. That's the first direct state investment since 1988 in nuclear. Government has accepted all 47 elements of the Fingleton Review. There is 30 billion allocated to nuclear in the current spending review, and civil and defence are planned together for the first time. So now the pipeline is visible, and it's sequenced in a way that's never been done before. And that changes as a manufacturer looking to enter the sector. That fundamentally changes your risk profile and gives you the opportunity to grow. And we know that this is not a straightforward ask. Qualification, it takes time. Standards, they're demanding. And at times, the capital investment you need to make may well be significant. So those are reasons to engage early with support and not reasons to step back from the opportunity. And the Catapult is looking to bridge some of those firms, or help those firms bridge into that qualification, connect manufacturers looking to enter with the OEMs, and act as a neutral systems integrator. And today's questions, and this is the interactive bit, yeah? We're going to ask you questions. You're going to vote back for these things. They're going to actually feed back into the government civil and defence nuclear strategy. And your input will be cited, it will be used, and it will influence whether UK manufacturers capture this opportunity, whether we once again concede that to international competitors who are already moving. So before we start, I'd love to introduce our esteemed panel today. So the panel, if you want to come along and come and sit down, you should have, if I move the slide on, if you could sit underneath your picture, that means my speaker notes will go nicely in order. If you don't, it will be what it will be. Excellent. So as we're taking the seats, we're going to have, first of all, we have Dr. Steve Jones. Steve is the Chief Engineer for Nuclear at the University of Sheffield AMRC and the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. Steve started actually as an apprentice welder in 1980, so not a toolmaker, yeah, but an apprentice welder, and became Rolls-Royce's global welding specialist. And he's led the Fit for Nuclear program, which has helped over 860 companies assess their nuclear readiness. We have Ben Pine. Ben is the Sales Director for Civil and Defence Nuclear at ITI Group. Now, ITI Group is a systems integration business with over 40 years in nuclear operations, delivering both civil and defence programs. Now, Ben's going to give us some commercial views of where the supply chain is and has genuine gaps, and where the growth is actually happening. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Julian Vance Daniel. Now, Julian founded Vesco Engineering in 2006, building it into one of the UK's leading pressure vessel businesses, delivering over 20 million of nuclear contracts to Hinkley Point C, Sellafield, and ITER, which is in France. So following the acquisition of LTI Metal Tech, he remains a senior business development role and is also treasurer of the Welsh Nuclear Forum. Hopefully I got that right.
Chair now.
Oh, chair. There we go. Ross, finally, I'd like to introduce Ross Pascoe. Now, Ross Pascoe is the CTO of Rotork PLC, the FTSE-listed specialist in intelligent flow control and actuation products used across the nuclear power sector. Now, Ross joined Rotork in 2022 following senior engineering roles at Dyson and Stanner, with an early career experience in rail and automotive design, which places him in a great position to look at that cross-sector transition that we need to make. And then finally, and not least, Andrew Blowfield, Dr. Andrew Blowfield, sorry. Andrew is MTC's civil nuclear expert with a background in physics and electrical engineering, both from the University of Liverpool and the National Physics Laboratory. Now, he focuses on helping manufacturers position the UK's nuclear programme, including SMR competition and Sizewell C. So are we ready? Well, that was the energy in this room is fantastic. So we're going to dive into the session. You need your phones in hand, okay? And that's for everybody in the room and anybody outside as well. And we're at the mercy of the tech gods here. So fingers crossed it works. What you need to do is you've got a QR code and you have 30 seconds to answer this. So it's just like Countdown, but we haven't got the music, unfortunately. That costs a bit. And then we'll open it up to a panel discussion. You'll also be asked to enter your name and information We'll be using that at the end. We're asking you if you want to continue to be part of the consultation process, and that will allow us to directly contact you and continue that discussion we start today. So we're in question number 1. We've got a few seconds left, about 5 seconds left. How does that look? Wow. So this was interesting. So we looked at the registration beforehand, and about 18% were coming from defence and nuclear. It looks very different now, actually, we're in the room. But it's very interesting. We do have significant representation from other industries, which obviously operate in a very similar area. And then we need that 20 to 25 positions. So if we could reset that clock, would be very helpful. But I've got the first question to the panel, really. So the claim that we need to actually attract cross-sector capability in here, yeah, is that claim realistic? Or is nuclear sufficiently different that cross-sector experience counts for less than the framework assumes? So over to yourselves for any response or reflection there. Please go ahead.
Okay, Julian Vance Daniel, Vesco Engineering. We're about 40 to 60%, depending on what day of the week it is, invested in the nuclear industry. Our background was in oil and gas. Around about 2 decades ago, that was about 100% of our business. We started to move into the nuclear industry around about 12 to 14 years ago, along with many other mechanical engineering businesses throughout the UK. And whilst there are most certainly differences in the nuclear sector, then a good experience in any of these major industries in the UK will give businesses the capability to at least enter the market in some shape or another.
First and foremost, I'd really like to see if we can one day, see the detail of nuclear existing, because if we to look at that in a manufacturing standpoint, or a finance, or a civils, or dare I say skills, that would be a really interesting characteristic to see from that. Echoing Julian's point there, I'm really encouraged to see Alex and the team being our domestic voice. And I'm saying this proudly because I'm an ex-Rolls-Royce guy as well, and I will come and see you later. Since 1988, this is the last time we've had an opportunity to develop our own reactor. And here we are with an opportunity to get onto a platform. And I love the slide, by the way, because I hope there's loads of people here that can actually tap in, no pun intended, tap into those tanks, valves, et cetera, because the thing that really resonates here is these three here are highly regulated industries. And if we know what the jurisdiction boundaries are of your power plants, we're not asking this manufacturing supply chain to strive for reactor island, primary island credibility at this moment. And we know what Tom Sandsman said. If you want to get on the plant and want the grid by 2029, 2030, you have to play the sliding scale. Now's the opportunity. We've just seen the UK 4 tender come out. If we know where the boundaries are on the primary island, we can tap into the aerospace and the offshore side of things. So, sorry.
We've got about just under 1 minute left. I don't know if there's anybody else wanted to.
Yeah, so very, very quick answer. Actually, the answer is yes. If you provide into existing regulated high precision industry, you can supply into nuclear. There are some barriers that you need to go through. Nobody's kind of saying that there aren't, but those barriers can be surmounted. And we should be clear, in the UK, there isn't just Rolls-Royce SMR. You know, there's also in the room and speaking later, both X-Energy and Last Energy with programs in the UK. The opportunities are multiple. So the opportunity is real. So move towards nuclear as well as nuclear moving towards you.
Excellent. So we're about to move to the second question. This is where the tech gets really clever. Now we know who's in the audience. Now we want to understand where you were at. So what are the capabilities and what are your willingness to invest in a sector? So you kind of place yourself at a scale of 0 to 10 on each of those dimensions. Because the framework requires about 300 to 500 nuclear-capable firms within the next decade. The composition of that growth really matters as much as the number. So the firms that are capable but cautious need investment and perhaps need different support than those that are already technically able. So let's see. Now, what we're seeing here is the average. This is kind of cool. The number 1 is moving around. We've got, come on, let's get some more kind of votes in here if you've not voted already. I wish we had the countdown music because there's a bit of pressure kicking in here. Right, we're on. Actually, the countdown timer, by the way, has a negative number now. So we're at negative 6 seconds. I didn't believe that was even possible. So let's see where we're at. Okay, so what we're saying here is manufacturing capability is pretty much we've got capable firms and kind of on the fence on that kind of they're starting to make that willingness to invest. When you look at that distribution, though, is fantastic, isn't it? It's all over the shop. There's no great... That really makes my life a nightmare. There's no clusters in there. Okay, so given that we need 300 to 500 nuclear-capable... I can't believe that. 300 to 500 nuclear-capable firms within the next decade. To the panel, in your experience, what's the gap between a firm that says it wants to enter the sector and the ones that actually are ready to do so? And how long does it realistically take to close that gap? Ross, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So just a reminder, so I'm Ross, I'm from Rotork, and we do advanced actuation for valves and flow control. Our story is slightly different, maybe because we've been in since the 1960s and we've kind of weathered the various different peaks and troughs of it. But I think to answer the question from our perspective, what we're really looking at is how will we be successful in it? What do we bring to the equation? Because I think, as we talked about, it is a highly regulated sector where everybody has to achieve a certain bar. So really what we're looking at is how do we differentiate ourselves with that? What value can we particularly do? So that's really what we're focusing on when it comes to investment. But in terms of timescales, because the journey we're going through as well is also requalification of stuff as well as doing new developments. And it is significant. It does take a long time. So I think the key thing you need to bring to it is the commitment. It's not a short journey. When you're in it, and you follow it through. But from our perspective, we certainly see the rewards both in the UK and globally for what we're doing.
Perhaps if we jump to Ben, if you've got any reflections yourself.
Yeah, my name's Ben Pine. Like I say, I work for ITI Group, and we provide operational technology to civil nuclear and defence sites. We sort of work with nuclear for around about 40 years, starting with the original AGR fleet. I think for our challenges, we are ready, but actually working towards new build is sort of different. So it's actually, we've got the credibility and the capability where we've worked and we can demonstrate we've worked in nuclear, but actually we've had to upskill quite a lot to work, for example, in Hinkley Point C, because it's almost like another industry on top of what we've been doing. So that's been quite a learning curve for us. And I think partnering with people and working with the clients and getting references and understanding what the requirements are for new build has been quite a journey for us as well.
Excellent.
Perhaps some of what's been mentioned here is the fact that the UK supply chain is currently geared towards aftermarket and maintenance, because that's what we've had for 40 years. Yeah. So building nuclear reactors is a step change, cultural change, manufacturing change. It's not just about qualification and certification, it's about capacity and and some of this investment picture is about capacity. So, and also, some of the more, ASME 3 or whatever, they're going to take, as we've talked about, time. Yep. And pretty significant levels of investment. There's other parts. Accreditation is a big piece of this. So not just qualification and certification, but accreditation. So we're here to try and colour that picture in for people so that they know what it is they need to do. You've got nuclear companies saying it's actually been quite difficult with the new build. So we need to form those collaborations to reduce those barriers.
I think also another key point is, on that accreditation journey. A lot of the core capabilities, though, within these firms, in these other industries, are there and directly transferable. So it's a question of you don't have to build the capability up. We just need to apply that to the nuclear industry and get the right accreditations that are needed.
Nick, the question was how long does it take? And the answer to that is it's not an event. It's not even a project. It's a continuum.
Yeah.
But in our case, it took no less than 2 years to try to get ready for nuclear work. And in our case, the then new program, or relatively new program of Fit for Nuclear, was helped us greatly. And I for those businesses that are not yet ready and are considering it, I would suggest that something like that is something they should follow.
Excellent. Now, when we go, we're going to move to the next question. So are you ready? Oh, come on. Get a bit of energy in the room. Right. So we're trying, this is interactive, by the way. So if we're asking you to invest, as manufacturers, invest in this, clearly the question is going to be around the demand signals, yeah? What is it you actually need to make the investment? Now, when we ask these questions generally and we ask whether you need investment or not, that always comes, yes, we need financial support. So what is it? You know, the capable firms are not currently investing nuclear in scale. The question is why, yeah? Do you need firm contracts, long-term schedules, policy commitment? And some can be delivered quickly, but understanding what those signals are and what matters most to government and industry is where to act first. So where do we need to prioritize those demand signals for you as a manufacturer to make that commitment in investing into the sector? So let's have a look. This is good. We got 63 out of nearly 200. Well, I definitely, can we get that 5-minute timer? That's really annoying. That keeps missing our 5-minute timer, but let's get a few more in. Right, we're over halfway now. So statistically, I think we're good and a valid point. So multi-year procurement contracts with committed volumes and not letters of intent. So it's manufacturers want to know that if I'm making that investment, it's going to pay back in the times, particularly if you've got capital investment. The ROI can be quite significant in terms of its time paying. So the question I've got for the panel is, if government pulled one lever this year to unlock private investment in nuclear manufacturing, what should it be? And what would you personally need to see for committing capital spend within your organisations? And then for Andrew and Steve, what would you like to see manufacturers do as well? Over to you guys.
Yeah, I think for us it's really confidence. We need to make sure that we're confident in what we've been told about the timescales of when it's going to happen. We've got lots of masters as well, and I think for us we've got to make sure that if we're going to invest in new manufacturing facilities, new machinery, people as well, that we get that commitment back, so that we know that we're going to realise that's good, the success of the investment really.
So I mean, obviously, approved contracts and kind of commitment is good, but from our perspective, we're very much looking at it as what do we control, and not waiting for anybody else to kind of make a decision that then helps us get into it. So the key to that is really looking at the global market. So where there may be uncertainty in some, are there certainties in others? Is there opportunity to share with other sectors as well, so we can progress and invest and get returns from that, and then get the learnings across? Also, as I said before, we have a legacy product out there, so actually the service and maintenance of that is a real benefit for us, because that funds a lot of the future development and allows us to do more. So I think certainly for people coming in, that's something to bear in mind, is the recurring revenue you get from that to help with your investment. I appreciate, starting to it, you don't get that from day one, but it is an important thing to factor in your longer term planning. Julian, do you want to comment from your side?
Sure. The question was demand signals. Well, if you haven't noticed the signals, then basically let's wake up, because it's here and now. It's in this room right now. We've listened to two very influential speakers earlier on. I mean, nothing could be more clear than that the nuclear industry in the UK, in Europe, and globally is about to explode. It's going to double, I suggest, in 10 years, and probably redouble in 10 years after that. It's going to suck in talents from engineering businesses throughout the country. And in terms of what we need to invest, yes, it would be nice to get to turn some of the signals into tangible contracts. Of course it would. But for most businesses that are working in the engineering sector right now, and particularly in the nuclear sector, they're already starting to invest in people and in processes and capital equipment.
Steve.
From a capability standpoint, I'd be kind of like looking at breaking down the silo between civil and defence. Invest once, use twice, multiple times. It's very evident, as you saw from the first slide, that we've got capabilities in other areas, and the transfer of those skills and the transfer of capability with the change of design of reactors, that opens up a new opportunity for a different type of testing infrastructure as well. And we need to invest in that infrastructure. I would just say UK4 tender. It's just been released by the government. So go and have a look at the website.
If only we could put that URL up, hey? Okay, so any other comments from the group? Are we good to move?
Just to re-emphasize Julian's point, maybe not use the word explode in future, but yeah, you know, globally, this opportunity is not just domestic, right?
Yes.
10 AP1000s in America. We've got Eastern Europe, obviously because of what's going on there, moving away and strategically investing. There's a huge global opportunity here. We've got firm commitment from the UK. We need more of that, of course. Never say have less of that. But the global context is really important. We've got to start returning our value globally, because I think we're far too insular at the moment, and so that opportunity is an additional to what we're talking about domestically.
And what we saw from Rolls-Royce SMI, you know, the order, I have to mention your order intake again, but you've got UK demand for sure, but you've got in Czechia and in Sweden as well, orders are coming in from overseas. So this is not just a domestic opportunity. Absolutely agree on that one. Okay, so if we move to the next question, we're going to look at where basically we'd like to understand what the barriers and perceptions, because it's perception, your perception of the barriers as well, are. Qualification for sure is the single biggest systemic bottleneck preventing new manufacturers from entering the supply chain. There we go. We've got one vote. Oh, come on. We've got a huge audience here. We've got one vote. Or two. Two. That's confusing, isn't it? Numbers. There we go. So, but the UK currently lacks a coordinated qualification infrastructure. So many capable firms, which we saw earlier on in the charts, face multi-year delays, significant costs, and no clear pathway before they can supply a single nuclear component. So let's have a look. Let's try and get ourselves to like at least 50%, 100 votes. Has everybody voted in the room, yeah? Come on, give me some feedback, please. I'm trying to keep you awake and not make you fall asleep here. Pressing your button. If it's anything like my kids, by the way, they're always on their phones, so I can't believe this is not getting a quicker uptake. So let's move over to the panels. We've got a reasonable amount. We're starting to see, oddly enough, when we did the National Manufacturing Summit, that was the skills question came up again. So skills are always going to be one of the biggest barriers. But you know, the qualification is described in the framework as the single biggest bottleneck. So if that's true, why has it not been fixed already? And what would genuinely effective qualification system look like for a firm entering nuclear for the first time? So over to the panel. What would it look like? What would an effective system look like?
Yeah, I think it's about consistency, really. You need a clear, consistent qualification process that people understand. And you need organisations that are around to help people on that journey as well. getting fit for nuclear is can be quite onerous for some firms, especially SMEs. And I think, again, someone's mentioned earlier that the start tapping into the skills is quite difficult. There's encouraging young people to come into the industry because they're going to be the future is quite a challenge. It's not an industry they understand, and they probably don't realise that you can have a full career here. So I think if there's one thing that we all need to do is find a way of encouraging more young people, because they're going to be the future of delivering these projects.
But also, I guess when I'm looking at some of these numbers here, it's also about the skills internally to your business to actually help you navigate the way through to the qualification requirements. I mean, that seems to be a big one, and obviously an area where external support could really have a big influence for companies.
Yeah, just a very good point raised there. Fit for Nuclear is not an accredited system. It was never intended to be, but it's just an important journey to ISO 19443. It lowers the barrier to entry. What I would just kind of like say again, it comes back ASME 3 and the design. It's very difficult until we know the actual designs. And with the AMR, with the SMR, we are highly likely it's going to be an ASME 3. Go to those manufacturers, Julian. I bet you're qualified. Your people are qualified to ASME Section 9, Section 5, etc., etc. But the skills are there. The skills are there. It's the navigation, the regulatory requirements, and working the way through the woods that's a challenge for some of these people. And the HVMC is here to help you do that.
It took us about 10 years to get familiar with RCCM. And now we're looking at taking another hopefully fewer years to get familiar with ASME 3. But these qualifications, these codes are integral to nuclear engineering, and they don't come easily. They do. There isn't a starting point for them really. You have to be in it to get better at it. And in terms of ASME, that's the American system. Yeah, in terms of pressure vessels and tanks and columns in the UK, most of the businesses are familiar with ASME 8. That's the boiler and pressure vessel codes, and ASME 9, ASME 5, and the materials ASME 2, and so on. But less familiar with ASME 3. It is going to take some real time for engineers, particularly in SMEs, to get ready for the newer requirements.
I have a slight follow-on question for you, if that's okay, Julian. You mentioned all sorts of ASME numbers there a second ago, but if you say you're already supplying against some of those standards and you take ASME 3, what is that gap like? Is it significantly different, or is it actually a lot closer than people think?
Unfortunately, it is real. It is a very big gap indeed. In terms of investment, let's say you wanted to become a U-stamp business, which is basically a company that's capable of manufacturing pressure vessels to the standard code. That'll probably cost a business something like £10,000 in hard cash and maybe 20, 30, 40,000 pounds in training. You can put a 0 at the end of that in terms of getting ready for N code, which is ASME 3. So it really is significant. You don't do it on a whim.
Yeah. Very quickly, I just on that point, if you look at the ASME register, we've got 50 companies plus who are U-stamp qualified, so they can operate already to the quality requirements of ASME Section 8. Moving to the primary island or the reactor island is another journey, but we do that incrementally. Don't switch your company off just because you can't get onto the primary island. You can do a lot with the secondary and balance of plant.
This is incremental revenue on top of your business. So if there's a good ROI for you, and there is clearly a significant pathway to revenues over the next decade of investment, both domestically and internationally, that could well work out in a good way. Okay, so let's talk about what that potential growth could look like in the next question, particularly for the first time, though. You got your phones ready, by the way? Yeah? You got so there's a new QR code. Let's get that up. Let's start getting the votes in. I feel like an auctioneer all of a sudden. Right, for the first time, the UK is planning civil and defence nuclear programmes together, creating a combined demand pipeline worth well over £100 billion over the next decade. I mean, that is significant, isn't it? And the framework argues that civil and defence share significant technical overlap in high integrity components and advanced materials and specialist processes. So there is now a joint opportunity. We're not just talking about civil. We're not just talking about defence. It's together. And aligning those requirements reduces duplication and increases the market size for manufacturers looking to enter. So we're on about 60, or let's try and get that to 100. Has everybody voted in the room? Yeah? Yeah, okay. All right, I know where my place is. There we go, we're over it. So let's have a quick look at some of the numbers here. Now that's, annoyingly, when we don't get one big thing, it makes it quite hard to talk about, but 69 of the votes, supply chain development. Okay, that's interesting, creating that long-term demand. And then that's followed up by the purple one, workforce skills. We've talked a lot about that already. But that obviously, as we combine that demand, certainly helps that justification of that investment. So let's go to the panel. Is that, the question I've got for you is the dual pathway, is that genuinely open to new entrants, or is, do you see that defence nuclear is effectively a closed shop? What's the opportunity and can we get into it?
For us, I think it's long overdue that sort of civil and defence nuclear was aligned. We operate in both, fortunately. I think it's handy when there's a dip in one. Sometimes there's an acceleration in the other, which helps your business. I also think that the opportunities in defence were more difficult to tap into in the past, but they're becoming more visible now. I think it's still not aligned. You've got to sort of dig quite deep to find opportunities in both sectors. So I think the visibility and publication of them needs to get better so people understand the opportunity more. But I think the alignment is definitely welcome for us as a business.
I think the element of the question that's missing really is necessity. It's not really a question of if or should. It's we have to. We have to create a more integrated approach to both civil and defence. And yes, of course, it's about return on investment and supply chain and skills. It's about national security and energy security. Okay, we live in a complex and increasingly complex world. So we need to reflect and move towards what that demands of our supply chain. Now, if you're looking and comparing internationally, things like South Korea, completely vertically integrated. Okay, that's the competition. They can offer product right now and is being taken up by nuclear vendors right now. So if we don't change the picture and align ourselves on our civil and defence demand, right, we won't have the capacity or the capability to really respond to it, and we'll be left at the back of the queue.
So I think any convergence of these is an advantage. The less time you have to kind of spend looking at different things is obviously more you can invest in the product or the customer value. But I think picking up on one of the key points there around the supply chain, I mean, as a business, we're in civil and we're not in defence. That's a decision we've made. It may be something we do in the future, and we get a lot of demand wanting our products in that. But from our point, a key thing is the supply chain is challenging for us, trying to find those components or those partners. So if that opens up more to us, that's a huge advantage. Where someone may have been in a defence supply chain before, we can now use them in the civil, then that is a huge advantage to us.
So I think that visibility, the combined demand visibility of not just civil, but defence as well. I've worked a lot with SME manufacturing businesses. Having some, if we talk about that confirmed long-term contracts, which was definitely a positive result earlier on, but knowing that you're now not just delivering into the civil, but across the place, both sectors, the duality of it, certainly gives you more confidence to make those decisions because you've got that combined visibility. Julian, is there anything you wanted to add from this?
Yeah, as a genuine SME, it's really quite difficult for us to be all things to all men. And so in our business, we've concentrated in the civil side. Just a brief anecdote. It's great to see what's happening in the fusion market right now. When I left university at the end of the 1970s, was 25 years away. Right at the end of my career, it's still 25 years away. But it is actually, there is actually a lot of opportunity here and now in right throughout the all aspects of the civil side in terms of the if you'll excuse me, euphemistically named defence sector, then yeah, I would like to see qualifications and certifications and codes and specifications combine. It would be for the good of all.
Awesome.
I'll just say very quick, from a manufacturing standpoint, the codes are not that different. The regulatory bodies coming together, the DSNR, the ONR, that is a major, major help by them combining and breaking through that regulatory barrier. The only challenge that my colleagues might put up is the fact that you need to have security in place. You need to have all these other bits and pieces, but you can still do a large amount of work. And with the AUKUS program coming on, why wouldn't you want to try and break through it? So we're looking to the likes of our colleagues as the vendors to maybe break some of those barriers down.
So the opportunity is there, and it's real right now. So if we want to go after that opportunity, let's move to the final, almost final question, actually, last but one. Phones in your hands? Ready to go? Right. Gradually, people are waking up to it. So the framework sets out specific delivery mechanisms, capability mapping, demand convening, shared test beds, heard that mentioned a moment ago, supplier development programs, and digital assurance platforms. So if a neutral manufacturing organisation were to support you in your route to nuclear, what would be most valuable to you as a manufacturer? Where would you want that support to be? And how can we target it? So we got 25. Come on, we got to get a bit more momentum. This 30 seconds, it'll work. When we had the music, by the way, last time round, it worked a lot better. So maybe we do need to pay the people for the countdown music. So let's try and get that to 100 on there. We're seeing two areas distinctly coming out here, which is mapping your capability against specific nuclear opportunities. And then the 50, which is running supplier development and qualification support programs. So really, that's a capability and support mechanism we're seeing coming through. We've got could do horse racing as well as auctioneering. We've got this other area around convening demand, actually, is making a late entrance here on this as well. So definitely three key areas we're seeing dominating here. So my question to the panel is, in your view, which of these would generate the most immediate movement in the firms who are capable but not yet committed? And which would generally be within reach within the next 12 months? So over to yourselves. I can repeat the question.
When we were starting out, we found that benchmarking of our position against our peers was very valuable. It was an important part of the Fit for Nuclear program. We found it very beneficial for those businesses in the engineering sector that are not yet in nuclear. They will find it useful. They will soon realize that they're better placed than they thought they were.
Yeah.
And really, they ought to now seize the opportunity.
One of the things one of the things I love about benchmarking is it helps you, saying, actually, I'm a lot closer than I thought I was to where I need to be and my competition. But it also really does help you focus where those investments need to be made, because the gaps you need to close to be competitive in the market, that's where you spend your energy, not being better than everybody else, unless it has a distinct commercial advantage. Any other feedback?
For us, the key things is having access to qualified supply base. So without having to do that work ourselves, that would be hugely beneficial, because that's work that we're having to do to find that. But then also, quite simply, external test houses, things like that. That is a real bottleneck for us. So having more capability of that would be, I think, a big advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and this is really informative, actually, because as we've said, this is going to inform the strategy. This is a consultation. So I think we recognise as a Catapult that we're not enough nuclear swept is a good word, right? It's suitably qualified, experienced. So there's an effort we need to make to move towards nuclear, right, in order to really exploit that opportunity. We obviously need industry to do the same thing. I think mapping your capability against specific nuclear supply opportunities is something we could quite readily do with our supply chain analysis and development. We've done it for AMRs. AMRC have been doing it for years, particularly for Rolls-Royce SMR as well. So there's a lot of knowledge relatively untapped, actually, and I think what we're looking for is a deployment pathway and what that deployment is aiming towards, really. So if we're able to act as a neutral convener, as one of the go-to organizations, as a point of information, then I think all of that really becomes important.
Yeah.
And then we increase our familiarity more specifically and explicitly towards civil and defense nuclear.
Maybe also aggregating those gaps across a supply chain, so we know where actually targeted interventions on a supply chain could be, rather than the individual firms. And that's really good, actually, when you take that to potentially use that to help attract foreign or even domestic investments into the supply chain, to uplift the capability to fulfill ultimately the demand.
It supports that as well, right? Sorry, it supports that as well with the Advanced Nuclear Framework, you know, and we've also just seen GE Hitachi putting themselves into the Advanced Nuclear Framework. The ability to understand really in detail where those gaps reside is actually quite powerful, because then we need to create the investment pathways to plug them, that we can then attract people to say, we are aware of the gaps, we're investing in them. That means you can then exploit them when you come to build your power stations in this country.
Go on, please.
All I was just going to say very, very quickly is that we, the Catapult, we've got 10 to 11 technologies that have been technology roadmapped and released. The technologies are independent. They don't matter where they go. They cover every sector. The mapping of that, I don't know if this is working, but I'll speak loud. The mapping of that is basically underway. There's loads of clusters, the TVAC and the likes of the technology park up in the northeast. Absolutely brilliant. My colleagues from AMRC are doing a lot of supplier development and qualification support. And by the way, we actually have set up a UK international working group with the codes and standards and very strongly linked to ONR.
Brilliant. Very quickly, we've got a couple of seconds.
A couple of seconds then. Currently, the supplier development programs run by most of the tier one or principals in the UK are fantastic. Please, as small engineering businesses or large businesses, do take advantage of them, embrace them, get involved, and they will tend to take you where they feel that you're lacking. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to move on to the final question now. So, sorry? Very quick vote, but as you're voting on this, let's see. This is the kickoff of the consultation process. Your voice really matters. So thankfully, the tech gods were on our side. We've seen some great votes come in. I'd like to thank the panel and everybody in the room for this interactive participation, so thank you for that. And your voice matters. Your input today will directly feed back into that consultation process. So this isn't just a one-off thing. This is kicking it off. And thank you very much. Is that one more?